Okay. Oh gosh. Can you, Lindsay, your screen sharing now is just showing a really big box that says resume slideshow.
Okay.
There we go. Perfect. Oh. All right. Okay, welcome. It looks like people are starting to funnel into the presentation slowly but surely. So we'll give everybody, you're in the right spot. We'll give you, give a couple minutes for everybody that was in the waiting room to have all of the magic computer gods get you into the panel, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Okay. Looks like folks are in. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the 20th annual Green Tour. My name is Neil Bonsgard and my pronouns are he and him. And I am one of the program managers of the Energy Challenge, which is a program of the Environmental Center, and we're happy to host the Green Tour this year. I'm joined by my colleague Lindsay Hardy, who you'll be meeting during the Q&A. So I just wanted to take a moment to connect this Green Tour, or this panel and the Green Tour, with the Environmental Center for those of you who aren't familiar with our work. We work alongside people of all ages, local businesses, and elected officials to create and advance meaningful, lasting change that everyone can be proud of. A perfect example of that work in action is the Green Tour, which is our real boots on the ground event that's normally in person, but lucky for this year, we get to do it as a virtual event. So it's exciting for us, celebrating our 20 years of bringing the community together and the first time that it's going to be virtual. So we're showcasing all sorts of amazing projects that should inspire and connect you with the experts to learn more about how to integrate all these cool ideas at home. So this year we have our tour looking a little bit different. So you're joining one of our great panel discussions where we're really getting opportunity and access to ask all of those great questions of the real experts in our community. But we also have other resources as a part of the tour being virtual online, where you can learn about the sites that are on the tour, vote for the People's Choice Award. We also have videos that are coming out all week highlighting some of the sites and some of the technologies in those sites. Very related to today's presentation, we do have one event that will be in person because we're able to do it effectively and safely. So Core's site, which we're learning about today, on Saturday, there will be an opportunity to go see that in person. We do want to make sure that we're respecting everybody's space. And so we do ask for registrations for that in-person event, so then you can get a time slot. And you can visit that on the Environmental Center tour website. So first off, we want to thank our sponsors, our program sponsors, Zero Energy Project and the City of Bend. And for this Green Tour, we want to thank our title sponsor, our presenting sponsor, Energy Trust of Oregon. And our additional sponsors for the tour are E2 Solar, Miller Lumber, Saginaw Sunset, Stemic Design and Architecture, and Earth Advantage. The following land acknowledgement is a work in progress. Our team at the Environmental Center is in the process of engaging local Indigenous community members to ensure that this statement respectfully and accurately represents their experience. We look forward to learning more and adjusting our land acknowledgement as needed. In Bend, Oregon, we are on the traditional territory of the Northern Paiute, the Wasco, and the Warm Springs tribes, which now comprise the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. Acknowledging territory shows respect for Indigenous peoples who called this land home before the arrival of settlers, and in many cases, still call it home. It's important to recognize that we are simply guests on this land. As host of the Green Tour, we can't talk about home and property ownership without naming the impacts of colonialism. When Native people were displaced from their lands and forced to settle on reservations, tribal housing throughout the country became standardized with little regard for individual culture, region, climate, and materials. Homeownership is a privilege, and access to a safe, healthy built environment is not equal. We want to encourage you to take time to learn about the history where you live, whose land you're on, and how you perpetuate ongoing colonialism. So in the chat, we'll provide this phone number, and you can text this phone number to receive links and additional action items. Okay, so what's in store for us today for this presentation? We're soon going to welcome this amazing panel. We have Amy Warren, who's going to be representing Core Community Land Trust, Bruce Sullivan from Base Zero, Jason from the Shelter Studio, and is also part of, all these folks are very involved in the Core project, but he is the co-founder of the Land Trust. Joe from Sunlight Solar, and Peter from Aero Barrier. So all these folks worked on this project and will be able to go pretty deep on this affordable zero energy land trust development. So we're gonna quickly launch a poll for those of you that are on the call right now. This is just gonna give us a little bit of an idea of who is in the room. So for everybody that is on the Zoom event, please go ahead and start filling that out, that poll out, and that will help us see who's here. So as they're coming in, it looks like we have a pretty good mix of folks on the call. We have just about one person from every category. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a couple more seconds and then share those results. We've got builders, contractors, community members, designers, architects, homeowners, people from nonprofits, healthcare professionals, and potential home buyers. So we have just about everybody here on this call. So without further ado, I'm going to ask all of our panelists to go ahead and turn your videos back on. And Lindsay, introduce my coworker Lindsay, who will be moving forward with the Q&A. One more thing that I wanted to mention is the format of this call. I'm looking at the participants, and a lot of you all have been on calls throughout this week. But with this Zoom format, and for those of you on Facebook, go ahead and comment as questions come in. You can do that either in the chat or in the Q&A feature. And we'll get to those questions, as many as we can get to towards the end of the presentation, or kind of where they fit. But just don't expect a typed response during the middle of the presentation, Peter. So without further ado, here's Lindsay and our great panel.
Hi everybody, my name's Lindsay. My pronouns are she and her, and I also work on the Energy Challenge at the Environmental Center with Neil. I am really pleased to be bringing this panel of energy experts and enthusiasts here together tonight because we're going to be talking about a really important issue to Bend, looking at housing affordability and how we can build more, not only more affordable homes, but homes that are actually built to last and are safe and healthy and durable and will stand the test of time. So I would like to start out today by going way back to the beginning and the roots of CORE. And this really starts with Amy and Jason, the co-founders of CORE. I'd love for you, first of all, to explain to us who or what CORE is and what is a community land trust.
Sure. So I think community land trust is one of the coolest models out there for affordable homeownership. It basically we acquire land, build housing on that land, but we only sell the home. The trust owns the land in perpetuity. The homeowner has a long-term ground lease on the parcel that their home sits on, which gives them rights to the land as if it were their own in many ways, and also comes with a deed-restricted resale formula. So when the home is sold, some equity goes to the homeowner and some equity stays with the trust. And what this allows is for the home to be sold as affordable in perpetuity, not just the first time or the first 20 years. And that is really one of the coolest things about using the land trust model, is that permanent affordability, because the subsidies that are put into this project either last forever or for the life of the home. You're muted, Lindsay. Lindsay, you're muted.
Man, such a rookie move. You'd think I'd have it by now. Amy, could you also introduce yourself and how you got here? I know you kind of took a roundabout way of getting to CORE. What's your background in?
Yeah, so I was in the building industry a little bit, and then, you know, after the recession, I went back to school and got an energy engineering degree. And as I was saying to Bruce earlier, I only know enough to be dangerous. And then used that engineering degree to start a nonprofit, which totally made sense to no one.
Naturally.
But you know, if you dig into it a little more, it does. So yeah, you know, Jason and I co-founded this kind of off of this seed idea that, well, what if we could create communities that didn't draw off the energy grid, and what could that do for energy consumption and the future of production plants, and as the population grows.
Great. Jason, can you introduce yourself too, and what your background's in, and how you ended up co-founding this with Amy?
Yeah, of course. My name is Jason Offit, owner and designer at the Shelter Studio Incorporated. I'm a residential home designer here in town. I've got a degree in architecture, minoring in structural engineering stuff. I started my career doing commercial architecture about 7.5 years back in Atlanta. Then I started working with high-end celebrity clients doing their houses back in Atlanta. I always boast about the first house I ever worked on was a Vander Holyfield's house. So a little boxer that's a little bit known that Mr. Mike Tyson chewed his ear off. So that guy. Anyways, I've been moved to Bend, Oregon in 2001 and doing pretty much residential design ever since, about 99%. Every now and then I'll do a commercial TI, and just did a wine tasting room up in Washington. Yep.
Great, thanks, Jason. Mm-hmm. And again, this is kind of for both of you. Why is sustainability a key piece of your mission? When we look at attainable and sustainable housing, how are those things working together to help you meet your mission?
Jason, you looked like you were going to unmute.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Okay. Well, gosh, when Jason and I founded this, that was a part of the discussion, that we didn't want one without the other. You know, it's part of his life and his career, and it's part of my life, and it's just I guess I see the world maybe differently than some, but that's just how it should be.
I got some of my insight from it with working with another affordable housing entity in town, which is a national entity. And hopefully, yeah, I'm unmuted. But another national entity in town where we were doing some sustainable housing here in town, and I saw that it could work. And I was just like, well, everybody should have the ability to attain sustainability in their home, not just the affluence. So it worked, and again, we moved it forward going with CORE.
Great. All right, I want to circle around to all these experts we have here as well. Of course, you're all experts. But I want to now shift over to Bruce. So when I think of zero energy building here in Bend, Bruce is one of the first people that I think of. I know he's been involved in the industry for a while, so I'd love for him to share why you got involved in this and a little bit about what your background in business is.
Well, thanks, Lindsay. It's great to be here again. We were on the call on Monday, the panel on Monday about electric vehicles too, so that was really fun. My background is really in energy efficiency. I have been doing this my whole career since the 1980s and helping people make their buildings more efficient, mostly in the residential sector. And so I've just kind of moved along with this as things have changed. The construction industry changes very slowly, and I have to say that I'm saying some of the same things that I did in the 1980s, especially about ductwork. But it is also true that we've seen things improve steadily over that period of time, and we're to the point now where zero energy is not only possible, but it's affordable, and it's also probably the best house that you can get. It is a better house than a conventional house in every single way, including that it's more affordable. And so that's what I think is really exciting as we kind of are on the cusp of this major change where all homes will very soon be zero energy or very close to it. So I'm pretty excited about that. And you know, I'm not exactly sure why I got into it. It just kind of happened. It's just one of those things in life that you take one step after another and you end up in a place.
There you go. All right, and Peter, can you introduce yourself, a little bit about your business and how you got involved in this project?
Yeah, so my name is Peter Grube, and good to see this crew again and all the viewers on the other side of the screen that I can't see. Hello. I am a partner in Northwest Aero Barrier, and we are an air sealing company, and we're doing this because we too believe that better buildings matter, and they matter for people, the economy, and the planet. And the reason we're involved, I think Jason hit the nail on the head, like sustainable buildings are critical for everyone. So if we're gonna have people in houses, the houses should be healthy, they should be affordable, and they should be beneficial to the planet. So for us, it was just part of our DNA to be part of these projects.
Great, thanks, Peter. And Joe, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why Sunlight Solar is getting involved in these affordable housing projects?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lindsay. Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Mazzarella. I'm with Sunlight Solar. Been with Sunlight for about 9 years, and Sunlight's been in the area for almost 20 years. We install mostly residential PV systems. We also do some commercial, some municipal around the state. And we've been, working on, it used to be back when I first started, we'd work on a couple net zero homes, maybe a year, and it's been good to see that number grow over the number of years, and especially seeing stuff like this. So when Amy approached us about being involved in this, we were really excited to jump on it, and we were able to kind of navigate the incentives too, which the timing was really good because the state and the Energy Trust of Oregon are kind of starting to move a lot of the incentive funds to low to moderate income, and Core, being a service provider in that space, we're able to take advantage of that and make this so it really worked out for everybody, and especially for the end user. I mean, it is great for the planet, but for a lot of people, especially lower to moderate income, having no utility bills besides sewer and water, that's pretty good. That's pretty nice. That makes an affordable home even more affordable as it goes on. So really excited about being a part of this. And so so that's us.
Great, thanks, Joe. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the site design here. So Amy and Jason, how did you decide on the cottage community design for your first community core zone?
Amy, you can bolster, but this site came to us through some local contacts, and with reviewing the size, it's 22,000 square feet, I believe. So the goal was try to get as many opportunities for housing on the site, and we wanted to do individual housing so each people can have their own home and structure. So about the time that the site came available, the city of Bend started adopting the cluster cottage community code, and we were able to apply it. So it worked pretty well that way. Amy, you want to drop in some other notes?
Yeah, I mean, the cottage code is great because it allows for maximum density on a parcel. The way we have set this up, and we looked at both ways with this project and our upcoming project. Well, does it make more sense to do an attached garage or perimeter parking with walk-in homes? And the perimeter parking with walk-in homes really allows us to get more homes. That's one of the nice benefits of the cottage code, is that you're not putting roads through the subdivision.
Right. And did you face any challenges as you were trying to put this site design together?
Yeah, of course. Number one is those darn pesky cars that we all have to account for. That as you look at the site plan and the site location itself, as folks tour, you'll see that there is, Amy, a quarter to 1/3 of the lot is parking.
Yep.
But we did need to accommodate those. Other challenges with the lot, not a bunch. It's wonderfully oriented. The long axis is east to west, which does help out. It was already dug out years ago, but didn't quite fit the dig out that we needed. But some of the dig out, the hard rock hammering, was already gone. So no, there's challenges for sure, but this one wasn't as hard as some of the others around town currently.
Yeah, and as great as it is to have a lot of trees, the site didn't have a single tree on it, and for solar that worked really well.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the homes too. We'll start from the inside and work our way in. So as we look at the home envelope, Bruce, can you tell us a little bit about why designing and building, when it comes to designing and building a zero energy home, what are some of those key things that need to be considered? And how is CORE going about addressing that?
You only have an hour, Bruce.
Bruce is teaching a full course on this. If folks are interested, we'll be sending that info out after. He usually does a couple days on this topic. So
yeah, it is a big topic, but I think it's really important to say that CORE is doing everything right in a way. One of the things I like to emphasize is that there is no single path to getting to zero energy, and the path that a certain builder or designer chooses is going to depend on a lot of different variables. And so in this project now that we have, where we're focused on maximum affordability, I think CORE is doing a lot of things really well. One is that the houses are quite small. Hurita is about 1,100 square feet for each home. That's, I believe, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. Is that right, Amy?
Yep.
And then, that's the biggest step right there, is to get a nice livable space in a small footprint, because you have less to heat. And that's really the key, is to increase efficiency. The most cost-effective unit of energy you can buy is the one that you don't have to buy. And that's why you want to make the shell of the building as well insulated and as tight as you possibly can. And then you have very small heating and cooling needs. And then, space heating and water heating are really the biggest energy uses. So if you can reduce space heating a lot, that's pretty straightforward to do by just making the house really well insulated. We're blessed in Central Oregon with a perfect climate for both keeping a house warm in winter. We have pretty good sun all winter long, and also cool in summer, because we have fairly cool nights, and you can use that cool night air to cool off your house. So there's lots of really important things that CORE's doing really well in terms of the shell itself. I don't know if you want to get into mechanical equipment at all, but that would be the next step, is to get.
We'll move inside in a minute, and we can do
Okay.
that a little bit too. Perfect. Thanks, Bruce. So sticking along those lines, we're looking at the envelope. Peter, I was hoping you could chime in and tell us a little bit about aero barrier and how that works, and how that comes into play when we're looking at the whole envelope system.
Yeah. So from a efficiency, durability point of view, creating a comprehensive air barrier is really critical. So for hitting the net zero targets, any uncontrolled air leakage through the envelope is a penalty in trying to affordably make your renewable energy. So you're heating air that's just flying out literally through the walls, or you're cooling in the summertime. So the less energy you waste, the more effective you are with your panels in getting to your net zero goals. So that's one critical component. Also, being able to control the air barrier and stopping unwanted leakage is critical to creating good indoor air quality, so that you have the ability to control where the air is coming from, when it's coming in and out, how it's coming in and out, as opposed to just flowing randomly with the breeze. And then we want these homes to last a long time. So one of the major detriments to a house after the bulk water, you don't want bulk water getting in, but after that, it's leakage going through the walls and the ceiling, and that leakage carrying moisture and being one of the major ingredients of mold and mildew and rot happening. So there's no downside to controlling air leakage in a house. And with the really, really important add-on here, that you must have some mechanical ventilation. You need to meet the current ventilation codes. But as long as your ventilation is good in a modern building, you should get that envelope as tight as you can. And there's, like Bruce said, there's a lot of ways to air seal. People have been manually air sealing forever. There's tapes, there's all kinds of solutions. AeroBarrier happens to be a newer automated solution, which uses physics to find and seal leaks, as opposed to crawling around on your hands and knees or trying to climb ladders and put on tapes and all those different things. So it's a good way to do it. It's a fast way to do it. There's a lot of different ways. And AeroBarrier completes the air barrier of the home. It is not the air barrier. So you still, as a builder and a designer, you still need to be smart and intentional about what your air barrier is, whether it's your exterior sheeting layer or whether it's your interior drywall layer. We work together with the project team to figure out where that is, and then air barrier is the final sealing it all up and getting all the little nasty penetrations that are kind of impossible to find manually.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, and so when it comes to the design, it's really important then to get everybody at the table at the beginning and decide which route you're going to take and who you're going to be working with, to get everybody on the same page early on. And I know that's something that Bruce, you do some work with, and there are other folks in town that, when you're in the planning stages, is the best time to start talking about when you're going to be doing some of this work.
Well, do you want me to answer that? Or
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about what that design process looks like and how you might engage with somebody who says, I want to build a good house. What do I need to do?
Well, there are so many different ways to get there that you really need to think about what's the best path for you. And for most people, that's going to involve what does it cost. So I really encourage people to get an energy model of their plan done. An energy model is a computerized estimate that will allow you to optimize the different components. So when you talk about high performance wall as something better than code, well, about 12 years ago, the first zero energy houses in bed had 12-inch thick walls. 5 years ago, when Robin and I built this house, we used a 10-inch wall because we thought that was the most optimum. And now Core is using an 8-inch thick wall. So what you've seen is that as solar panels have become cheaper, as we've gotten better at air sealing, as we've been able to reduce the amount of material and expense in the wall systems by getting some of that same performance enhancement from the other areas. So the energy model is really important, and it allows you to do this optimization. You get an energy model by participating in one of the third-party verification programs. So the Energy Trust Energy Performance Score program is important, and you can go to the energytrust.org website and see who the people are, the local people that will help with that. The electrical co-ops also have their programs. And so everything is based on this performance modeling up front. So you just have to go to your electric utility website, find out how their program works and plug into it. And that's really the place to start making these decisions.
I think one thing we learned this week is there's actually a $500 incentive from Energy Trust of Oregon just to have the pre-design meeting. So not only are there a tremendous amount of benefits from that information you learn, but they pay you to do it. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. They just really recognize that value of getting all these heads together early in the process. So one other thing you're looking at early in the process is actually working with the designer who knows what they're doing and putting together some of the basics of the zero energy building. And so Jason, when it came to designing these homes, what were some of the key things that you incorporated architecturally into your design to get them on the path to zero energy?
Yeah, well, I started looking at it. So number one is site. Started looking at that, you know, comparing like Bruce's house where his site is north-south oriented. We had some challenges there where the core Harita site is east to west oriented. So you get more solar access or solar hitting at core versus Bruce's house. So we first identify that. Then perfect world is expose the long axis for Bend, Oregon only. Doesn't apply for Miami, Florida. But for Bend, Oregon only, apply the long axis to the sun as much as you can. So then I try to encourage, you know, bring the sun in early in the morning, let it warm the structure up passively through the day. Then about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, start diminishing the oculus, you know, windows into the structure so it doesn't overheat. There's kind of like a base rule. You kind of take about 50%, what you can do, put 50% of your windows on the south and east and the remainder in other spots around the home. But site, number one, again, try to expose as much of the house to the sun and let it do its job.
Can I make interject a comment here? Because there are a lot of sites that just don't have good solar. They have trees or they're pointed the wrong direction. You can do all of the energy efficiency measures on any home. It doesn't have to have solar. And so it always makes sense to build a really tight, well-insulated shell and then do all the other things that we're going to talk about, even if you don't have access to solar.
For sure. I definitely agree with that. Because everyone think about it's really hard to remodel the bones of your home. So do the bones of your home really well, because you can come back in and change out your kitchen in 20 years, no problem. Kind of hard to go in there and open up that wall and re-insulate. So make the bones very well.
Great. And then Jason, along the lines with the design, can you just give us a high-level overview of what these homes are like? Do you have a favorite feature that you were able to incorporate in them, as far as like ability, or just from this is somebody's house kind of perspective, not even just the energy side?
Yeah, so for me, it's big and open feeling inside, and there's very little hallways. I'm not a big fan of hallways because they waste space. Yes, you have to get to spaces through hallways, but these homes don't have a lot of hallways. So basically one to go to the master, which is very short, and upstairs there really isn't a hallway. You go upstairs and land to the bedrooms. And again, that way we're maximizing the use of the square footage so it feels bigger without building bigger.
Yeah, and you know, anyone who comes out on Saturday will have the opportunity to see that. They do not, when you walk into them, they don't feel like 1,100 square feet. They feel big and open and roomy, and the vaulted ceilings allow for a lot of breathability room. Just, you know, it'll be great to have folks stand in there and feel that.
I can't wait to check it out.
Yeah.
I've been learning about this project now for years, Amy. I'm so excited to see one and stand in one and get to experience it. So, yeah, Bruce, did you have something you wanted to chime in there?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
I was going to just add, I mean, Jason's making it sound easy, and he's also being modest because he's done a good deal of net zero design work in Central Oregon. And so there's this conversation in this particular panel, you know, we have a lot of focus on affordable net zero, and it's now very realistic and very doable. And it does start early to make that goal affordable net zero. So the designer's role in creating simpler forms that are easier to insulate, easier to get tight, that goes a long way towards ending up with a really affordable net zero project.
Great. All right, well, now that we've moved inside the house, Bruce, I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit more. You started to talk about the heating systems and some of those key systems inside the home. What do we want to be paying attention to make sure that we're managing energy load inside with our mechanical systems and other things like that?
Right, well,
I know these are big questions.
they're big questions. But we're talking about small heating systems, and that's really the key, is that because we've done such a good job of making the shell of the building efficient and resisting the heat transfer from inside to outside, we don't need a big heating system. In fact, this heating system, in some cases, a traditional furnace, they just don't make them small enough. And so you don't want to put a V8 in a Vespa, right? So you have to kind of downsize the heating system to something that's appropriate. And in a lot of cases, what we're looking at now are things called mini split heat pumps. These are very small heating systems that use a heat pump technology. They're incredibly efficient. They take 1 unit of electricity and they make 3 to 4 units of heat. So it's very efficient, and it costs less to buy the electricity to run that heat pump than it would to be cost to run a typical gas furnace, for example. The other nice thing about the mini splits is that they will operate down to the temperatures that we see here in Central Oregon every winter, and that's usually below 0. Most of the systems are certified or tested to run down to minus 14 degrees. And there are some kind of design and decisions and some things you have to do to make sure that you're covered for those super cold conditions, but that's something that we're very familiar with and know how to do in all cases. So I think that the heating systems are really small, they're super efficient. The other place that we see heat pump technology starting to really come into play is in water heating systems. Right now, electric water heaters at 50 gallons and above they have tiny little heat pumps in them. It's kind of like your refrigerator. You know, your refrigerator is technically a heat pump that pulls air out of the cold cabinet, and it blows that heat out the back. And we've all seen that in our houses. When you feel the refrigerator's running, there's warm air blowing out the back. Well, a heat pump water heater is really very similar to that, and it's about the same size compressor inside that makes this whole thing work. So heat pump water heaters take 1 unit of electricity and they make 3 units of hot water. So again, the fuel cost, the input that you pay for is the kilowatt hour, but you get 3 units of hot water out of it, and it's less expensive to operate that than it is most gas water heaters. So we're using this technology to really make things much more efficient, and not only are we using less fuel, but the fuel we're using can be renewable energy. It can be made from wind farms and solar farms and the solar panels on the rooftop. So I think it's really important that we start thinking about how do we move fossil fuels out of these homes, and the time to do that is when the home is built in the first place.
Yeah, and another thing that's important too when we start to talk about these really well-sealed homes, making sure that we're being really careful about what you're bringing into them. And so with the heat pump technology, as opposed to combustion with gas, you're reducing the amount of other VOCs that are coming off of those appliances, and thus making some healthier indoor air quality for everybody. So there's just all of these things have so many layers of benefits that are so important that go beyond just saving energy. So there are other ways that we also try to maintain the indoor air quality and making sure that once we get the homes, there's that old adage that is so untrue that a home needs to breathe. So what do we do in these homes to make sure they're breathing and that we're bringing in fresh air?
When you tighten up a home as tight as we're talking about now, you definitely need to bring in fresh air. But I'd like to make the point that most conventional homes have a lot of indoor air quality problems, and they're very leaky. So what we're doing is we're paying attention to what the materials we use. We're paying attention to the air tightness of the structure, and then we're using a controlled mechanical ventilation system to bring air in from outside. And I think these days we're also adding filtration to that. So you can bring in fresh filtered air into the house and distribute that effectively through the entire house through a very small, simple ventilation system that doesn't have to have big ducts or a big blower or anything like that. In a lot of cases, that ventilation system will also have a heat recovery function. Now, it doesn't have to have heat recovery, but that's what most of these homes in our climate do have. And that means that the air that we're blowing out, we're recapturing some of the air that as it comes we're recapturing some of the heat as it comes in, and that reduces the ventilation penalty that you would pay just by blowing your air outside. Because when you bring air into any house, you have to heat it up in the wintertime. Conversely, if you're air conditioning the house, you have to cool that air that you're bringing in. So by recovering some of the temperature through this heat exchanger, you can actually reduce the penalty you would pay to get that fresh air in terms of the ventilation rate.
What's core strategy? Are you guys gonna do a fan on a timer, or what did you end up going with in those houses?
So downstairs we have the couple that is the Lunos E2. So they work in tandem together. And then upstairs we were putting the bathroom fans on timers.
So awesome.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. I mean, the core project really excites me and inspires me that these are houses that are going to be affordable in perpetuity, and we arguably are significantly more high performance than a typical production home that we're finding right now in Bend. So kudos to you guys.
Kudos to you guys. I mean, like a moment of gratitude. Everyone can hear how lucky we are to have Bruce as our consultant pro bono. I'm like, every time I have a question and call him, I just feel gratitude. And then, Aero Barriers helping us out with a ton of in-kind support, as is Sunlight Solar. And with the ventilation system, we got these cool new kind of new on the market doors called Van Air, and the doors actually vent through the door. So it can bring that fresh air that's running through the house through a closed door. So like those were from Building Solutions, got us some of those at cost. There's just so much gratitude that goes into this project to make it happen. It wouldn't be, I'm just floored as I listen to all this every time of how much we've been able to do because of support.
Awesome. Well, I know there's a lot of huge conversations. They've even come up during the Green Tour about affordability in Bend and affordability of land. And there's a lot of wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth. But I think what motivates people is when there's actually solutions happening. And so with you guys, and we heard a little bit from Habitat, like there are real solutions happening, and it's a model of how it can happen. And it's the vision. And I think that kind of empowers people when you aren't just worrying about it, but you're doing something about it.
Yeah. Amy, can you repeat the name of the system that you're using? Did you say it was a Lunos? And you're muted.
I am a rookie, Lindsay, so it makes sense.
That's okay.
They're the Lunos E2 ERVs. They're in wall, yeah.
All right. We have a few questions coming in too that I want to make sure we squeeze in here as we go. I have somebody asking about the technical definition of zero energy. Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about this, or anybody else can chime in? What do we mean when we're talking about zero energy? Specifically, they're saying that they're in Washington and have a lot of electricity supplied by hydro, and so they have clean fuel. So what are we talking about when we say zero energy?
Yeah, well, basically zero energy means in a nutshell, you produce your annual usage amount of kilowatt hours or electricity you use annually, you produce on site is kind of net zero. So traditionally you'd have to be all electric because you can't really produce natural gas on site or offset natural gas. There are some formulas now with Energy Trust and other entities where they can, if you overproduce, you can apply that to the natural gas for the carbon footprint side of it. But traditionally, as you produce all your energy on site, a lot of this is done through net metering, and I don't know what your utility is in Wenatchee or what the net metering policy is, but here in Oregon, basically for at least the Energy Trust, like Pacific Power and PG&E or PGE, is what you can do is in order to get to net zero, you're going to produce probably 3 times more than you will in the summer than you do in the winter, but you're probably going to be using 3 times more electricity in the winter than you do in the summer. unless you're really into air conditioning. So the way Pacific Power does it in PGE is if you can take those credits, you will overproduce if you're net zero in the summer months. So Bruce at his house most likely overproduces all summer long and basically banks credits for all the electricity that he overproduces. And then he starts tapping into those in the winter months when he starts to use more electricity because of his electric heat and such. And he's producing less because the daylight hours are less. It's cloudier, it's shadier generally because the sun is lower. So you take those credits, you basically bank those credits and you try to get to net zero. Now on our end, when we get to these early design meetings, it's very important to be talking with somebody like Bruce or somebody else that does an energy analysis of the home based on all this stuff that a lot of us really don't understand. Like people call me and say, hey, I'm building a new home. How much solar do I need to cover all my electricity? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, this is something that's a professional needs a deep dive into like these guys are talking about the systems, how tight is the home, the mechanical units, the windows, the insulation, everything that is beyond our scope. But someone like Bruce will come up with a number. I think these core projects are supposed to use around 6,000 kilowatt hours a year. And so we know how to size the system based on the tilt of the roof, which Jason was nice enough to give us some south-facing roofs with minimal shade. And then the orientation, like I said, south is best here. East and west can work if it's not too steep. And then we look at the shading. We have special instruments that detect that. And then we can come up with a number of panels and wattage that will satisfy net zero. Now to the viewer's question about we also use a lot of hydropower here, especially through our co-op electrical providers, Central Electric and Midstate, for example. And I think their power, it's over 90%, I think, that they get from the Bonneville Power Administration, which is, you could argue is renewable now that it's set up. Yeah, I mean, they do use, but it wasn't renewable to get it started. And the dams probably, most of them aren't going anywhere. And that's kind of a whole nother discussion, whether a hydropower through large dams is renewable, but it is very low carbon at this point. And so that's great. But as far as getting to net zero, the technical term is you produce all your power on site. Feel free to add anybody. These guys all know about this too.
I'd like to add one thing about what you're talking about with hydropower in the Northwest is basically zero carbon electricity. But since nobody's building new dams,
right,
that any new growth in the system, any load growth has to be supplied by something else. And I think that we all have our responsibility to kind of, if you're building a new house, for example, or you're expanding a house, you take some responsibility for that additional load that you're putting on the grid. And that's where zero energy makes sense at an individual level, beyond the fact that it just saves you a lot of money and it gives you a more valuable house. There is this kind of a social contribution that you're making by not demanding more from the grid.
It's absolutely true, and I agree. Also with your vision of that, and because you're right, they're not making any more dams. If anything, they're going to take some out, and it seems like people are going to keep moving here. I don't know if you've noticed that, and so it is there is some more, and it'll be interesting to see where these co-ops go for their power after that, and once it's tapped out, are they going to start building solar farms themselves or wind farms or something more, something renewable? And the way that the political winds are going, as far as here in the state anyway, it's the legislature is definitely and the leadership has made an intention to get all of our power from renewables in the not so distant future. So
yeah, question for Joe and Bruce. Is there any estimates of when the state of Oregon may hit grid parity similar to Hawaii and California?
Not a concrete number as far as when that might happen. A lot of that has to do with things it's hard to tell is how much more affordable will solar get. There is a bottom as far as there is, as far as we've seen it dropping quite a bit since I've been in the industry, almost 10 years now. And so almost in half of what it was, which is pretty awesome. But our electricity, I think, will start to increase in costs as we see a lot more of these fires and everything and climate events happen, which looks like they're not going away anytime soon. And, I think we're going to start, the infrastructure is going to have to be beefed up. Someone's going to have to pay for that. So as right now, we're still insulated a bit by out-of-state coal, unfortunately. Which is relatively inexpensive, and the hydropower from paying what Hawaii and California are paying. I mean, Hawaii is probably paying 40 cents a kilowatt hour. Most of us are paying 8 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So you see it everywhere in Hawaii, and that's one of the reasons why. Not to mention they're basically at the equator. You get a lot of sun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but I don't.
They're starting to figure out storage there, and that'll be the next big conversation here, how to actually store energy from solar so that we can use it at the appropriate times as we just start to figure out this whole integrated grid and what that looks like. And in the power planning for this region, the Power Planning Council puts out a report every few years about the least cost resource for getting new energy to meet our growing demand, because as we know, it is growing. And the last report identified energy efficiency as the least cost resource. So as we look at buying new homes, the cheapest way for us to get our energy right now is to use less of it. It costs less to invest in efficiency than it does to build a new power plant, which is a really important message to get out there as we're looking at building these new homes that people think cost more to build. That's just another important part of the conversation too.
Yeah.
Peter, I know you had something. It looked like you wanted to pop in there a few times.
Well, I was just going to add, we started this kind of thread about what is net zero energy. And so on a big high level, it's the ability to fit the renewable power onto the house on site. So in theory, you could build a pretty bad house and have 2 football fields worth of solar panels and meet the definition of net zero energy. In no way would I suggest that's sustainable or a good idea, but just to get people's wheels kind of turning on what is this whole concept of net zero energy. It is through the design, through the systems you put in it, having the ability to put the panels on the house to supply what you need. So there's even a program that's zero energy ready, meaning that you've done the work and the planning and the design that you have the ability to fit the panels on. So if for whatever reason you can't get the panels on right away, you at least have the roof area you have facing anywhere but north. So it sounds silly, but you'll go around town and there's actual roofs that have no south, east, or west ability to hold panels because they're shedded to the north. So you have to be thoughtful about your roof a little bit, thoughtful about your conduit, thoughtful about your panel and your shell. And if you do those things, back to the model we talked about, the model will say, okay, you have the ability to fit this amount of solar capacity on your roof, and you could make this house net zero. And there are still incentives for zero energy ready, because this is a path that we're on, even though the technical challenges are pretty small now. Like, we know how to do this. There's a pretty good formula. It's not hard anymore. We are still on a path, both for existing housing stock as well as new housing stock. So if we at least set ourselves up for success as panels, the technology evolves, the battery technology evolves, at least have new houses that are going in ready to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and that's what Jason was saying about like the bones of the house. So building solar energy ready and doing the modeling up front, you might decide, or you might find out you didn't build a good enough house and that you might need to up your air sealing or some other features of the home. And you would want to know about that before you built the home so that you still have the potential to be able to fit all the panels on the roof. And just knowing that you, at the very least, can put solar on the house and have the right orientation, even if you're not getting down to zero. Because Joe can probably tell you a lot of really painful stories about having to tell people, like, you can't do it on your roof. Joe's job would be a lot easier, huh, if you could just put solar on every house who wanted it.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
Said it was going to be easy. I mean, my house is a great example. I have some beautiful ponderosas around it. I had to build like a pergola off my deck so I can have solar, and it was awesome. But but I didn't want to take down a 80-year-old, 100-year-old tree. It shades the house nice, and it's nice. So it's
yeah. That being said, you can always get creative. So just you shouldn't rule it out. Ask the experts. But yeah.
It's hard. I wish the guys that built my house though in 1976 would have used the same technology you guys would have. My little 3.5 kW would be enough.
Yeah. All right, we have a question here I want to circle back to, and then talk a little bit about kind of the future of core and what housing affordability looks like. So before we kind of wrap up, how well does radiant floor heating perform compared to options like mini splits? Who wants to take that one?
I'll take that one since I've lived with both. I think radiant floor heating is an absolutely great source of heat or way to deliver heat in a house that's inefficient. So if you have a bad house, radiant floor heating is a great way to make it seem comfortable in there. But if you have a house that's highly insulated, really tight, then your radiant floor heating doesn't really come on until it gets pretty cold outside. And so what you'll end up doing is most people would put this in some kind of a cementitious floor, gypcrete or concrete. And so what you end up is that you have fairly cold floors most of the time until it gets cold enough outside that your heating system has to kick on. And this is exactly what I experienced in a house that I lived in for about 7 years, where the radiant floor didn't really come on enough. And now that I live in a super efficient house where all the surfaces around me are very warm, the drywall's warm, the floor is warm, I don't really feel like I need to have radiant floor heat. So that's my take on it.
Thanks, Bruce. That was helpful with your lived experience with that as well. Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left. And so I just want to kind of talk about, like, what does the future of housing affordability look like in Bend? We know that this is definitely a really important conversation right now. So what are you all seeing as challenges to this conversation, and where are there opportunities for looking forward?
I think our biggest challenge, what keeps me up at night, is land. We can't continue to do this without land. So we need to keep the pipeline of homes going. I don't know that, we have some amazing affordable housing providers in Central Oregon between Habitat and Housing Works and ourselves and Pacific Crest, and I know more are moving in, but it comes down to having the land to serve the need, and the need continues to grow. And will likely be only magnified after COVID, with what it's doing to our economy and folks' jobs. And so, yeah, we're currently moving into another funding cycle. Our two projects we have right now are both paid for through community development block grant funds or affordable housing fee funds through the city of Bend, and they open that funding cycle annually. Their request for proposals comes out in October, and so we're very actively right now looking for land. I had to pitch that.
Yeah, and along those lines, we have a panel tomorrow that'll be talking about infill housing, so not solving the problem that Amy's going to be talking about, but how do we build more housing units and ADUs. So you can check that out tomorrow evening, Yard Uprising, as we continue to figure out these struggles of how we get the right amount and the right homes built here in Bend.
Can I make one little point? And that is that if you can afford to build or buy a new home, you can afford to build or buy a zero energy home. And one of the reasons that we aren't seeing a lot more of them is that people don't understand how much energy how much money they're going to spend on energy for conventional homes. And the answer to that is to give the market the information that it needs to make good decisions through some kind of an energy disclosure at the time of a real estate sale. So if you were buying a house, you would be informed of the amount of energy that's expected to be required in that house. And that's part of the climate action plan. One thing that they're thinking about in the Bend Climate Action Plan is how to make that kind of energy disclosure part of the system. And I don't know where that stands right now in that process, but we really need to push that through.
Mm-hmm. Something that's still in the works. I hope we all can stay tuned and really engage the community in that conversation of why it's so important to have the energy use disclosed. All right. Did anybody else have a wrapping up comment you wanted to share? All right.
I have a million wrapping up comments I want to share, but I know we're out of time.
Amy, if you want to share something, I'm just going to pull up our last slide here. So feel free while I am moving over here.
Okay. Well, with the last question, I wanted to pipe in, but I was on mute because the UPS man pulled up and my dog was barking. So I think it's important to note that those power productions, be it hydro or offsetting your need with solar or coal plants or whatever, none of that is fixed in time. And with the very potential of us moving into a water crisis at some point, hydro is not fixed in time, neither are the rates. So it's our philosophy that the most important thing we could do is as much passive work as we can to make that home net zero. And that is, like what Jason and Bruce were talking about with the envelope, and then, offsetting the needs by using energy efficient appliances, LED lighting. So what you are using is less at the end of the day. So when you do go to use something like solar, you're offsetting, I think we're offsetting maybe, help me if I'm not remembering this correctly, Bruce, but like 60%, we cut off about 60% of our needs just from passive stuff because we got to solar.
I think so. Probably at least 50 to 60%. That makes some sense to me. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks, Amy. There are a couple other questions came in that we won't be able to get to today, but we'll try to include in the follow-up email about a great list, a list of materials and methods to get started with, as well as the different types of air infiltration that we kind of had a discussion around yesterday. So we can send out some more of that info. Again, we have 2 more panels tomorrow looking at waste and deconstruction and demolition waste and how we could produce less waste in the construction industry. And you can visit Core's site on Saturday from 11 to 3, and you do need to sign up in advance for half-hour spots there. Thank you again to everybody who's on the call tonight. We'll include information so that you all can reach out to these experts if you have any other questions or want to follow up or get a project started of your own. All right, and you'll be able to visit Core's site online as well as some other sites to learn about different aspects of green building, from building zero energy homes to backyard infill ADUs and energy retrofits and everything in between. So we hope you'll be able to continue to go on tour with us over the next month, and you'll be able to vote for your favorite site with the People's Choice Award until the end of October. Thank you all. I hope you have a great night, and great, Bruce. Thanks for sharing some of those resources there in the chat. Everybody make sure to check that out before you head out. All right, everybody, have a good one. Stay safe out there.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Everyone.
Good job, Neil.
Thanks, everybody.